Hi friends, welcome back to Supporting Physician Spouses. I'm Katie, and this is week 3 of the Predictability Problem Series, our conversation about what it looks like to find calm and control when medicine keeps changing the plan. Last week we talked about the anchor framework, how to move from bracing against unpredictability and anchoring yourself inside of it. This week we're expanding that calm outward into connection. Because here's the truth, you can be the calmest, most grounded person individually and still feel totally off balance if your relationship feels like two people living parallel lives. Predictability doesn't come from the schedule. It comes from relational safety, from knowing I can count on us. So let's get into today's topic. I want to start today with a question. Think of a time that your spouse showed up for you. Maybe it was in a crisis, or maybe just on a hard day. How did that moment feel in your body? So while you're thinking of your moment, I'm going to share one of mine with you. This summer, I was on my way to take my kids out on an adventure, and we were meeting friends there. And we were almost there. We were half a mile from our destination, and I ended up seeing a really interesting roadkill that I think was an owl. And I have a son that loves owls. And I thought, how can I make our day even more special? So I flip a Yui one way, made it. And then on the next, when I tried to flip a Yui again, I ended up hitting a car that was traveling on a highway going 55 plus miles per hour. And it was a really scary car accident. Luckily, no one got hurt. But that obviously threw a wrench in our plans. After making sure everyone was safe, including my own little family, and the driver that I ended up hitting, we called the police and things settled. I called my spouse and he answered and said, "Is this an emergency?" And I said, "Yes, we were just in a car accident." And he said, "Okay," and quickly hung up because I think he was about to go into a patient room. And I wasn't expecting that he was going to be able to show up. But after I was able to reach my friend who actually ended up picking up my kids to take them to the adventure while I dealt with all of the logistics of being in a car accident, waiting for the police to show up, waiting for the tow trucks, all those good things. Lo and behold, I get a call from my spouse again, and he let me know that he was on his way. And I can't tell you what that felt like in my body. All I wanted the second I got in this car accident was a hug. I don't know if you've ever felt that way where you just know that's all your body needs to feel grounded again. And I actually haven't felt this in such an extreme way before. So he arrives and I finally get that hug that just let me know that it's okay, we're all safe, the adrenaline's running off, my shakiness is wearing off, and it felt so good to just have one other adult to show up for me, problem solve how I'm going to get my family home, see if I can get our bumper back on so we can drive back home. So that was a moment that he was able to show up for me, and now it's just this living proof that I can count on him, and we can count on us, right, to get through hard things. That feeling, that deep exhale of I'm not alone, is emotional safety. It's one of the biggest predictors of resilience, according to decades of research in relationships. When that emotional bond feels secure, our nervous system literally downshifts, and I felt that extremely on this day of my car accident. And our heart rate slows, and our body feels safe again. That's the predictability we're talking about. That's not something we find on our calendars, but that's the predictability we find in our connection. And yet, since we are part of a physician family, that connection can take some real hits. Unpredictable call schedules, missed holidays, the holidays are coming up. Sleep deprivation, constant change. It's not the lack of love. It does feel like a lack of opportunity. Dr. Tate Shanafelt has done extensive research on physician burnout and has found that time away from family and loss of control over personal life are among the top predictors of distress. This is not only for the physician, but for their partners and their families also. And psychologist Dr. Sotile, who has spent decades studying physician families, emphasizes that the average couple needs to spend at least 15 hours of meaningful connection together per week to maintain a thriving relationship. That equates to about 1.5 to 2 hours a day. And let's just say most physician families fall short of that because of the scheduling demands of the profession, particularly in the early training years. Can I get an amen? When couples and physician families spend less than that 1.5 to 2 hours a day, Dr. Sotile's research has found a higher incidence of living parallel lives. You know that feeling. We are spouses living under the same roof, but carrying completely independent schedules. Does that sound familiar? Since most physicians do fall short of that, let's aim for a target of at least 2 hours per day when it's possible in micro chunks. So let's break that down for you. I have a couple examples. What do we mean by 2 hours? Because maybe on a golden weekend, we get the day together. But on any given day, how can we find this chunk of time? Okay, so let's do some math. Here's some examples of 1 hour chunks. So let's say maybe a 30-minute walk with your spouse after he gets home from work. 20 minutes of a conversation where you get to talk about how are you really? And 10 minutes of expressing the things that you're grateful for before bed. Here's another chunk of an hour. 15-minute breakfast together, weekday or weekend. 20 minutes at lunch where you're texting or sharing voice notes to check in with one another. That's kind of a long chunk of time, but at least you're spending 20 minutes of thinking about your spouse and thinking about your fond memories with them. And add 25 minutes together while you're streaming a favorite show. That kind of allows for some conversation, laughter, or maybe you read a book together. Can we create a ritual around that? Here's another chunk of time. 45 minutes of a shared hobby. And if you're like me, you're laughing like a shared hobby, let alone just a personal hobby. But this could even be creating ritual around a chore like folding laundry plus conversation plus how do you make it special? So for my spouse and I, we love making chocolate chip cookies and enjoying them with our little mugs of milk. Other ways to make it a ritual is to, like we say, light that candle. There's something about just doing one additional small thing that makes it a ritual rather than just grinding out the chores. Let's add 15 minutes of physical connection, that 6-second hug before we hand off the kids for bedtime, 20 minutes of spontaneous laughter or game before bedtime. When was the last time you whipped out that deck of cards to have a good competitive laugh together? The key here is it doesn't need to be a big event. And it's all about the time that we engage with one another and that we are present, interacting, and prioritizing the relationship. So just to validate, if you've ever felt like you're constantly missing one another, which I miss you is the most common one that me and my spouse exchange with one another, you're not imagining this. But here's the good news. It's all about the intentional time that we spend together.
Quick pause. Hey, it's Kendra. We'll get right back to the episode, but a quick thank you to the partner that supports this show. It Gets Better Now, my one-on-one coaching practice for physician spouses. Maybe you're thinking, training is over. Why doesn't it feel better yet? That is my specialty, turning survival systems into sustainable ones. Time you can count on, calmer conflict, and a clearer sense of you outside of medicine. If you'd like support that understands this life, visit itgetsbetternow.com.
So today I want to help you create small, reliable touch points, what we're going to call micro rituals of connection that rebuild predictability in your relationship. This idea of rituals of connection come from the research from the Gottman Institute, where they have found that couples who do build these intentional, small, repeatable rituals, often the most brief of ones, report higher relationship satisfaction and lower stress. These rituals send your brain a message. We have a rhythm. We have a way to connect even when life is hard, even when it's stressful, even when we haven't seen each other in a long time, even when we haven't experienced each other in the way we wanted to. We're going to call this the 3x3 connection framework. 3 minutes, 3 times a day. We're going to keep this very small that you can build upon in order to build up to that 2-hour time frame. But these 3 minutes just to be thinking of one another, to try to connect with one another, can hopefully be the springboard to boost that connection. This is simple, it's so doable, and surprisingly powerful because they add up. So let's go through some examples of a morning micro connection. These need to be something that are grounding before the day scatters. So an example, sharing the things you're looking forward to for that day, or something that you feel nervous about. Exchange that long embrace. For me this morning, it was crawling back into bed after I'd been up early to cuddle with my spouse and nuzzle in his neck and tell him how much I love him. And then we need to create a ritual midday. So what's our midday touch point? The quickest of them is going to be a quick text or voice memo. Not about logistics. Not about complaining about how hard the rush was to get out of the house. But micro moments of meaning, like I'm thinking of you, or this made me smile and thought of us, or remember that one time when we had this experience. Yesterday I got to volunteer in a community garden and I was on fire after. It was so energizing for me and soul-filling. I whipped out my Marco Polo and let him see my raw reaction to the experience because it was so joyful. Those are the things that build connection. These messages are like emotional breadcrumbs. I love that analogy, don't you? Of just like, I miss you, I love you, pick them up as we can, and I can't wait to be with you again. Because they help us find our way back to each other. And then we have the evening reconnection. At the end of the day, before we try to tie things up with work, finishing those text messages, connecting with friends from afar, how are we choosing to connect with our spouse? You can even try the Gottman's stress-reducing conversation, where the goal isn't fixing anything and it's just listening. Or maybe it's your own thing. I love laughter. Laughter is really what I seek for when I'm tired because it's energizing, right? And one thing that my spouse and I love, we love watching The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And so we typically save his monologues to watch together so we can just get that good old easy laugh in together. Or physician spouse community. Are you guys watching Dr. Glockenflocken? My spouse typically tries to save those that he finds at work or that his fellow residents are showing him, and we watch those together and have that good laugh. That's easy. You're just saving the good stuff for one another. Shared laughter is one of the strongest predictors of marital resilience, especially under stress. So I highly recommend adding humor into your routines of connection. These predictable touch points train our nervous system that we feel connected. They help us to stay connected when we are going through a really hard, rough patch where work is demanding more than we would have wanted. And that connection becomes a stabilizer even when everything else is moving. What's fascinating about these micro rituals is that they actually affect our biology. Studies show that regular affectionate contact, even brief, are lowering our cortisol, which is really the keystone hormone that leads to so many poor health outcomes. And they boost our serotonin and improve even our heart rate variability. That's our body's way of saying, I know what to expect here, and I feel safe. This also leads us to this idea of co-regulation. So if we have these micro rituals of physical connection or emotional connection, relational connection, it leads to feeling co-regulated together when two nervous systems sync up and help each other calm down. Maybe we're familiar with this as parents, that doing this with our child is really beneficial, but it's also really beneficial in our marital relationships. So even if your spouse's schedule changes day by day, week by week, the pattern of connection doesn't have to. It becomes an emotional anchor, something your relationship can rely on, even when medicine is unpredictable. So let's wrap up here with the challenge. We talked about this idea, the gold standard of spending at least 2 hours a day together. Can you find your 2 hours at either bookend of the day where you are spending time with your spouse in an intentional way, which can include your kids. It can and cannot. All of us in our relationships intuitively know that there are times that including our kids is really joyful, and there are other times that being one-on-one with each other is also needful. So get creative with that, but also get really creative in these micro rituals in the 3x3 connection framework. What are the 3 minutes you're doing in the morning, midday, and evening? We're trying to break this down into really small bite-sized pieces because they're going to be so easy that you can't say no to them. Pick one thing for each time of day and commit to that for 1 week and see how it helps. Notice what changes. Does your mood change? Does your sense of partnership change? And how predictable your life feels? Because predictability isn't just about that control. It's about trust, trusting in yourself and in each other. Small, reliable threads of connection create emotional safety, and emotional safety is what steadies us when everything else starts to feel shaky around us. And if you feel like you want help tracking this or coming up with examples, this week on our social media, we are going to post different ideas of what these blocks of time could look like and different examples of them. And go ahead and comment on those posts and share what's worked for you or what is working for you right now. And I just want you to remember that listening in these conversations and agreeing, being like, yes, I understand. We take it to the next level when we're actually putting in the work to reshape the daily rhythms of our own lives. That's where the change happens. Next week, we will close this series talking about designing flexible systems that give you backup when medicine seems to blow up our plans. We can't wait to share this one with you. We'll see you next week, friends.
Thanks for listening. If this episode was helpful, imagine what we can do with your specific situation. It Gets Better Now is my one-on-one coaching for physician spouses and supports this podcast. You can learn more at itgetsbetternow.com.